Hi guys, and welcome to Crypto Exposed. Okay guys, I've got an article here that I wanted to discuss with you because some of the points that I think that have been made in here are very valid, and there's just some that I actually want to add to this. So the title is called Clarity Act Could Have Bigger Impact on XRP Than Many Expect, Developer Says. Okay, so I think this is going to cause a bit of divided opinion on this, right? I think there's going to be some people who are saying, well, yeah, of course, that's an obvious thing. But then I think there's going to be some other people who say, well, no, it's not, because XRP already has legal clarity. And so this is why I wanted to have the conversation with this, because although XRP does have legal clarity, I do think there are some things to consider here as to why, XRP, now don't get me wrong, it has been flourishing ever since the court case has been resolved, but I actually think there could be a lot more that could come along with the Clarity Act getting passed. So let's get into it. So the developer in question is Vincent Van Code, someone who I'm familiar with. I'm not someone who follows him particularly. He's on X, but I have seen a few things from him. To be fair, he seems like a genuinely good faith guy. Like, for example, there was a point where he'd been making some price predictions about XRP, and when the date came and it didn't come true, he didn't like try and move the goalposts or anything like that like some influencers do. He just accepted, hey, look, I'm wrong. I got it wrong. I really thought XRP would be a higher price than what it is right now. I thought it'd be what I predicted, and I got it wrong. And he says, look, I'm just a normal guy. I'm giving you my assumptions and whatnot. You don't really need to take your advice from me. I'm just giving you my opinion, which is fair enough. Like, that's fair. He's being honest there, and at least he's actually taking accountability for the things that he's put out there. So in regards to this, let's get to what he's saying and as to why he believes the Clarity Act could have a bigger impact for XRP. So it says here, court ruling reduced risk, but uncertainty remains. Van Code argued that the Ripple decision is still only a federal district court ruling, not a federal law. Because of that, he said future legal and regulatory challenges remain possible. He noted that the SEC could take different positions in future enforcement actions. Future court decisions or changes in administration could also narrow or revisit the ruling. According to Van Code, the uncertainty continues to concern large financial institutions. Many of them require clear statutory guidance before committing significant capital or integrating digital assets into core financial products. Okay, so there's part of this that I do agree with, and there's other parts that I'm a bit unsure about. Now, I will say I'm unsure, so I'm highlighting that because I don't know exactly the laws. In terms of him saying it's a district court ruling, not federal law, fair enough. I think that's a fair point. The thing that I will say is when he said that the SEC could come and revisit the rulings, I don't think that's possible now. Like, as far as I'm aware, that case is closed now. So I don't think the SEC could come back again and say, hey, we want to look back at this case that was resolved 2-3 years ago and we now want to challenge it again. I just don't think that's possible. I think once they've both agreed that they're happy to just close the case off, as far as I'm aware, that's it. I don't think they could do that. Now, could they maybe try and find new angles to try and come at Ripple, to sue them again? Yeah, I guess that's possible. They could maybe look at different ways. So this is why obviously a lot of people feel like the Clarity Act is so important, because if, let's just say, the Democrats do start to win power in the next term, in the next election, if the Democrats are still anti-crypto, are they going to come in and reverse a lot of what the Republicans have done, right? Which is a fair point, because when they were doing their campaigning, to try and run for president, the Democrats never really said anything about crypto. And there was actually a crypto, an event which Donald Trump went to, but Kamala Harris refused to go to. So that kind of tells you that, her stance was either she didn't really care about crypto, or maybe she's still intending to be anti-crypto, right? Like, she didn't say anything outright, but sometimes, your silence kind of gives us the answer. And Donald Trump was obviously pro-crypto. So that obviously gave a lot more confidence to people with Donald Trump. Now, don't get me wrong, he's most definitely manipulated it to his benefit. That's safe to say. But when we was first hearing this stuff, he was wanting to do positive things for crypto. And in all fairness, he has been trying to move things forward, like the Clarity Act. He is trying to do things that's positive for crypto overall. But I do think he's been using crypto as well to obviously make huge financial gains. That's just something that can't be denied. So yes, in regards to this, this is one of the things that I wanted to have the conversation about, right? So the thing that I'll say about this, like, because a lot of people will say, well, yeah, XRP has legal clarity. It's like one of the only cryptocurrencies that has legal clarity. That cannot be denied. That is correct. But I think this is the thing that I don't think a lot of people really think about or, like take into consideration. There's two things here, right? So the first thing I'll say here is this. When a company goes through like a legal battle, right? Even if they win the legal battle, it can still leave a stigma to the company. Okay? So, for example, I'm going to use now what might sound like a bit of an extreme, but I'm just trying to use this as a way to get the point home, right? If you think of a celebrity, right? Let's just say for that celebrity, a huge accusation comes out, right? So let's say something really serious like they did R to a woman, or they were a PDF, so to speak, right? Like that kind of thing, you get the gist. Let's say those allegations came out about a huge celebrity, right? Now, let's say they go to court, they manage to beat the charges, whatever. Now, they've then obviously proven their innocence. However, it doesn't mean that there's not going to still be that stigma attached to that celebrity, right? Like there's still going to be people who think, well, I'm not, leaving my kids around that person, or I don't feel comfortable being behind closed doors with that celebrity because I've, heard the allegations. So although they've been proven innocent, that stigma's still there, right? That they've still got that, you know what I mean? That uncertainty that people have. And I think that's something that happened with Ripple. And moving on to the second point, I've actually got proof of this. So there was an interview with David Schwartz. Well, not an interview. He was on Spaces on X, right? He was on Spaces. And basically, he was just talking about how before the SEC lawsuit came out, Ripple was just about to close a huge partnership with a company. And then they found out that they were going to be sued. So they told the company ahead of time because, they just wanted to be transparent. They said, look, we've got this thing coming up with the SEC. Blah, blah, blah. The company said, hey, no problem. We'll take a step back. You go ahead and, sort that out. And then we'll get back to business, right? Now, maybe the company thought this would be a quick thing where they just go through it and do like a settlement or something like that. And then they just all move along. But whatever happened, David Schwartz said that company never came back to them in the end. They never came back. So if you think about that, that shows you like an actual damage that the SEC done to Ripple because, David said this was a big partnership. He never mentioned who the company was, but he said this was a big partnership we had in the making, in the works. And then the whole thing with the SEC, it just destroyed it. It tarnished it. So this is what I'm trying to say to you. Like that stigma is there. Like it's absolutely there, I think. So I still believe that the Clarity Act is what can help with this, to be honest with you. So I'll get into that a little bit more in a second. I just want to finish this last point and then I'm going to explain more about the Clarity Act in this regard. So Clarity Act could encourage more institutions. Fancode said the Clarity Act is designed to address the issue by putting digital asset classifications into federal law. He added that banks and traditional financial institutions generally follow conservative compliance standards. As a result, many remain hesitant to hold large XRP positions or build major products based only on a court ruling. Instead, some institutions have limited their XRP involvement to lower risk activities. These include non-custodial services, pilot programs, and experimental use cases. If passed, the Clarity Act could remove much of the remaining regulatory uncertainty that risk-averse institutions continue to cite. Vancode believes this could support broader institutional adoption of XRP. So yeah, that was the second point I want to get into, and that's the thing that I agree with here. Like, I think what you've got to understand here is, while yes, you've got this one crypto that has regulatory clarity, the rest of the whole crypto landscape doesn't. And I don't think banks and institutions are going to hedge their bets on one cryptocurrency. I just don't think they're going to do that, because when it's all said and done, like, you've got to understand what the banks are risking, like trying to use crypto and stuff, right? Like the fines, the reputational damage, the licenses that they could lose. Like it's a big deal. So banks are not going to just jump and say, hey, we'll just use XRP. Like if they still feel like there's that stigma there, or the rest of the crypto space is unregulated, they're just going to want to rather wait, I believe, until the whole Clarity Act is passed. Because at that point, everything is open, right? So I think there are banks that would probably look to use XRP, but I still think they're waiting for the Clarity Act, because the Clarity Act is just that definitive clarity, right? Like, it's that definitive rules of the road clear. This is what all cryptos will fall under. And I think that's what they would want. I don't think they'll be thinking like, hey, we'll just take a gamble with this cryptocurrency that's got the, you know, the legal clarity. I don't think they'd want to do that. I think they'd rather just know, hey, once the Clarity Act is passed, we can all come in, everything's there, we all know what we're doing. It's great. Like, at that point, you know, the doors are open. I agree with that personally. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation, because I know a lot of people will be thinking, well, yeah, you know, XRP is the only cryptocurrency with legal clarity. But yeah, I do think at the end of the day, when you look at the whole of the crypto space, if you turn around and say there's only one, you know, company that's got legal clarity in the crypto space, all the other cryptos right now are like facing basically legal scrutiny, and that's what they're trying to get the Clarity Act done for. I think you're probably going to say, well, let's just wait for the Clarity Act to pass, because at that point everything's clear, we know what we're doing. Everything's fine at that stage. We know that if we follow these general rules, that will apply to all cryptocurrencies. Because once again, it's not going to be just XRP that's going to be utilized in the grand scheme of things. There's going to be numerous. So I just think they'll just wait for that clarity so they can get involved with other cryptocurrencies. XRP included, but other cryptocurrencies too. So yeah, I do think this is something to bear in mind, to be honest with you, because a lot of people probably think that XRP, you know, should just be getting all of the action at this point, regardless of the Clarity Act. But no, I don't think it's quite really going to work that way, in all honesty. I just know how risk-averse banks are. And this is one thing that David Schwartz said in regards to, like, trying to get them to use ODL, or as you guys know it now today, is Ripple payments. Like, they were saying, like, the banks were really slow to move. Like, the banks were doing these slow trials. And, you know, David Schwartz was like, well, can we start, you know, doing these real money transfers, like the big money transfers kind of thing? This is what it's designed for. And the banks were kind of like, not so fast. You know what I mean? They were really trying to like slow it down. So I really think at the end of the day, and don't get me wrong, I do get it, to be honest with you, because these banks are huge institutions. So if they, you know, end up getting caught in the wrong, like the banks are going to face like massive fines, and it could lead to them losing their license at the very worst. So obviously they're going to have a very risk averse approach. Like, naturally, they're dealing with, you know, billions of customers' money and things like that. So if this goes wrong, like, it could be terrible, right? It really could be bad. So I do understand it. So yeah, I just thought I'd have this conversation because, you know, like, we know we're trying to get this Clarity Act passed right now. I'm not going to go into it too deep. I'm torn on it. I don't know how good it's going to be for the retail users, but at the same time, it's what's going to help really bring the institutions in, and then that can lead to like the mass adoption phase of this. So it's really kind of like a bittersweet kind of thing at the moment. But if it does get passed, that to me, I think is going to open the floodgates. I don't know if it's going to just happen overnight, but I think at that point you'll start to see us leading into that mass adoption phase. That's what I think personally. So yeah, I do think that this could open a lot more doors for XRP overall. I think this is going to make it a lot better. I think more institutions are going to feel safer. So I think they'll get more adoption. Again, not to say that they're not getting any adoption at this point, but the big institutions are not really here right now. They're just not. Like, we can see that. That's not happening just yet. There's a lot of talk and stuff like that and things happening, but they're not entered into the crypto space right now. And I think that will be the big key. All right, I'll leave it there. If you did like this video, please remember to like, comment and subscribe so you can be updated for future XRP content. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you can be alerted on when I do drop a new video. Thank you very much for watching this, and I'll see you all on the next one.